starting before things are perfect. That is some wise wisdom that Mellanie Page shares with us today on the podcast. I had an amazing conversation with Mellanie. She is the founder and CEO of the ABA Collective, and she is passionate about delivering high-quality programs outside of the traditional applications of behavior analysis. You are going to learn today on the show how you can get started on your digital entrepreneurship journey. I remember listening to Pat Flynn, Amy Porterfield, those podcasts, Rick Mulready, on my way to work about 9 years ago. And I remember thinking, I have ideas. I want to share. I want to talk about how to help autistic learners find their voice. I want to talk about using speech therapy and ABA together. And 8 years ago, I started ABA Speech. And so I love talking all things biz. And today that's what we're talking about. So Mellanie's going to share with us how she felt drawn to start a business because it's tough. But if you have that little voice in your head saying, I want to do this. I am passionate about helping people do XYZ. You are in the right place. This is a super fun episode where we are talking all about getting started in business. I'm Rose Griffin, a speech therapist, board-certified behavior analyst, and founder of ABA Speech. It wasn't all that long ago that I felt overwhelmed by providing therapy for my autistic students and any students who were not yet speaking. Fast forward through many doubts, tears, research, and courses, and you will see the framework that I use today and share with over 60,000 readers weekly. One that will help you support your students and feel more confident in the process. I created the ABA Speech podcast to give you simple, step-by-step strategies to help you reach all of your students wherever they are on their communication journeys. If you're a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT student, or parent who's looking to help all students develop a way to communicate with the world, you are in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Welcome to the show. We have a great episode today with Mellanie Page. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
And you came on my radar because I know we were joking, but I do see your name like everywhere because you have a great job, you have a business, and you put together these really cool conferences where I did a talk. So thank you for having me. I did a talk about collaboration, one of my favorite topics, and it seemed like to go over well. So it was live. Yeah, we had a live audience there. That was fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. Yeah, we loved that talk and people keep talking about it. So for being here, yeah.
Yay, I love that. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the field, how you kind of got here?
Yeah, it's a pretty cliche story. I'm sure a lot of BCBAs have a similar one, right? Because we were the unknown profession for a long time. So psychology bachelor's degree and really wasn't into the sofa therapy and was trying to find a science that really jived with my personality and that I could enjoy, and kind of landed in the behavior analysis track at my university. My professor happened to be an ABA business owner who was like, hey, look, there's a bunch of college students that need jobs. And so started direct care with him and really enjoyed it. Loved the idea of working with kids. I had never really translated psychology into work with children at the time. And so that was fun. I was like, well, I actually think that I can do this better than I can probably interact with adults. And so it kind of naturally fell in my lap, and that evolved into getting a BCABA, the BCBA, and thankfully did not have to get the RBT. That wasn't at the time. And
right.
Yeah. And so just, grew from there, started moving into operations and just have been in love with the science and applying it in unique ways ever since.
Yeah, that's neat. I love that. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to get to work with students. I mean, adult learners, that's a whole other thing. Sometimes you're like, come on, why are you giving me this problem? You should know better, right? It's
Exactly.
hard. That's administrative roles. I've had a lot of those. So, okay, that's cool. I love that. And it sounds like your instructor, your professor was somebody who was like really entrenched in the field, but also as a business owner. So you probably got to see a lot of that. And you have your own business now. So tell me a little bit how you felt drawn to start your own business. I've actually done 4 podcasts today. I batched them out, and I think you're the 3rd private practice owner or entrepreneur, is really the word. And so I think that it takes a lot to start something that didn't exist. And so tell us how you had that little voice in your head, as Amy Porterfield used to say, that you wanted to start your own business, because it's hard.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it actually really excites me that people are considering entrepreneurship more and more in our field, right? You wouldn't normally translate clinical work to business. And so that's been really cool to see, and I'm happy to be a part of it. But for me, I was seeking professional development and was just on the CEU train and felt a little out of touch with topics that I wanted to see in the field that didn't quite exist, at least not anything that I was exposed to, right? I was looking for things like self-development. I thought, wow, behavior analysis is so powerful. Like, how can we improve our own lives using the science? And I wasn't finding a lot of that. I was looking for ways to become a better supervisor, because there weren't a lot of graduate school programs that talked about having your own team and basically having a mini company, right? A team of people that rely on you and depend on you. And that evolved into an interest in OBM, which also felt very gatekept and couldn't find a lot of information there. And so I really took it upon myself to start teaching and training on these different topics. And that started with CEUs and has evolved into, you mentioned conferences. And now I have 2 programs that focus on OBM and then online business creation for clinicians of all kinds. And so it's been kind of a fun evolution, but it was just just an area where I saw that need and created it for myself. So it's been really fun to find multi-passionate clinicians. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So for our listeners that don't know what OBM means or stands for, can you just tell us what that stands for and a little bit about what it means?
Absolutely. Yeah. So OBM is organizational behavior management. And the idea is that we are using behavior analytic strategies in workplaces. And so there are subspecialties like improving culture and performance management and even improving safety for organizations. And we're using the same science, but it translates a little different when you're talking about a whole organization, not just one learner, right? So a lot of the OBM Practitioner Program, which is the program I teach, focuses on how to zoom out and think about process and policy and just organizational level decisions that influence that behavior, but still using the same core science. And so it's been fun. And if people have an interest in working in business, it's kind of a nice, natural path.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I went to an OBM pre-conference workshop at FABA, which is this cool ABA conference down in Miami that happens in September. And there's another duly certified person I had never met. It was so fun for me. I met like people that were my besties for the whole conference there, the next 48 hours, but a lot of them were clinic owners, because I think that's the thing is like, there's so much, business is so hard. And my business coach always says, like, I always say, well, I'm not like a business, I will say something that's kind of derogatory against myself. And he goes, no. Say you're not from a business background, because now you are a business owner. But that's what we have to have a coach, right? Because there's just so much that goes into that, right?
Yes, 100%. And you made me think about, because we have kind of a diverse group of people that join the OBM Practitioner Program. Some are owners who just want to change the workplace from within, and others who want to consult. And the funny part is, a lot of times they have this aha moment where they're like, ooh, I'm using the science already. But it's kind of like parenting. I don't know if you feel this way as a BCBA, but I'm like, you would never guess my kids were raised by a BCBA, right? And so it's the same idea. Like when you have a business, it's very hard to like step back and think about what are these behavior analytic strategies that could improve the business, the performance, the culture. And so it's been fun to see them kind of connect the dots too.
Well, and I think too, as a business owner, it's nice to have it's hard, but it's nice to have time to reflect on those things? Because sometimes people are so busy working in the business, especially if you have a business where you're seeing clients all the time, that it's hard to take even just a moment to think about the business instead of being in the business. And they talk about that a lot, but it's really true, because you need to have some of that downtime. Or, in my space, I'm in like masterminds. Like, actually just had my mastermind this morning, where it's just other people who have an online business, because there's so many things that are very specific to what I do that are very different than like my other friends that own brick and mortar businesses. It's just very, very different, the things I need to know and keep up with and to streamline and things like that. So, okay, so that's nice. So in your OBM offering, do you offer, is it like some courses, but then there's also some live mentoring, or what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So it is asynchronous modules, and then we meet every other week to talk, and every other week we're implementing. And so it gives you enough time to practice what's in the module, and each module builds on the previous. And so you're designing a project essentially from start to finish. So we talk about identifying a business opportunity and then looking at it through an OBM lens, and then designing the different aspects of it. So finding the root cause of the problem, and then identifying some interventions that could be effective. And then we end with change management, because that's the hardest part, I think, in any business, is just getting a whole organization to change. And so a lot of mentoring in between, a lot of opportunities to chat. We have a Slack channel and community. So it's nice to see everyone interact and share their different ideas.
Oh, that's great. I love that. And then you have will you tell us the name of the two conferences that you have started? That's really amazing. I was thinking about doing a live conference in August, but I was like, oh, I don't know. We just have from like an operational standpoint, we do live courses, and then after they're live, they go into our self-paced CEU library, and people really like that. And we get lots of people that register and attend. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with that. but you do conferences, and it's a lot. So tell me about the two conferences that you do.
Yeah, you have more discipline than I do. I have the idea and I'm like, ooh, okay. So I started Business of ABA last year, and that is focused primarily for owners, directors, and ABA leaders on operations, strategy, and leadership. This year is really fun because we're talking a lot about how to remain a quality organization as you grow, because that skill is very timely right now with so much growth in the field, and just how do we make sure that care is still a priority? And then ABA Reimagine, that you were part of, is kind of my baby for branching out into different applications of behavior analysis. So in the autism space, we talked about specializations, collaboration, like you discussed, and really advancements, because our field is evolving. And then the other tracks were focused on, how do I use ABA in my personal life? And then how do I use ABA maybe in other industries? If I want to dabble, or I'm multi-passionate, like how do I find a different application that might be fun as either a side hustle or a job? So that was really cool to see. Yeah, I brought a ton of professionals together that did things that I would have never imagined. So it was really fun.
Yeah, it was a cool conversation. And I got a lot of feedback. People were messaging me. So what is one thing that you did at the start of your business journey that you are happy that you did?
Yeah. It's always easier to remember mistakes, right?
Yes.
So I think at first, one of the things, if I'm thinking back on it, I invested in learning skills that I knew that I needed. So you mentioned like masterminds. That's always been something that I've felt really drawn to invest in too, just to be around like-minded people, have opportunities to ask questions. I believe it's trial and error, but I also believe in investing in yourself to learn the skills faster and from the best people. And so I did that, and I started before things were perfect, which I think was very unlike my personality. But it was nice to see how something kind of was seeded and then grew into something that I couldn't have imagined or planned for. So that's been really nice.
Oh, I love that. So some of my business mentors, I just wonder who, when I was working more as a school-based SLP, I still work 2 days a week, but I would listen to Pat Flynn's podcast. Was really instrumental to me, and Amy Porterfield. I took her Digital Course Academy, and now I'm in this mastermind called Creator Science with Jay Klaus, and I have a business coach too. But is there any like podcast that you listen to, or anybody that, everybody has somebody they listen to and they're like, oh my goodness, this is my person. I was like, Pat Flynn was like using Teachable, so did I. Pat Flynn was using ConvertKit. I still use ConvertKit. he started a podcast. I learned how to start a podcast because of Pat. So he was just really instrumental in helping me feel like I had this vision that I could actually act on. But is there somebody that is in the online space that you have found really helpful, either through a podcast or course or?
Yeah, that is a great question. I am pretty obsessive about certain people too. So I can relate. Donald Miller, I think, just has a messaging framework. Yeah, that's just fantastic. StoryBrand. And so I've leveraged that and kind of refined it to make it my own and make it applicable to clinicians. It's something we kind of cover a variation of it in my other program. And Amy Porterfield is a big one. Colin Boyd is a little newer on the scene, but he talks a lot about selling on stage, and sales has always been one of those things, I think, as a clinician in general, that has always felt a little bit challenging for me to like get in the right mindset and to really value like my worth and what I'm bringing to the table. And so he kind of changes that and gives frameworks and structures for how to really be effective and successful in marketing and public speaking and in other areas where I have interest. So that's been cool. Yeah, he's been great as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I love that idea. I did a whole business mastermind with Pat Flynn's speech coach. His name is Mike Pacquione, but yeah, selling from the stage, speaking from the stage. I did that last year. I did 12 conferences. I was like, okay, did that check. This is not
I am on Mike Pacquione's email list.
Okay. Oh, tell him you know Rose, because he's like, he changed everything about the way that I present. And I got asked to do, I think he did his mastermind 3 years ago. And then you take courses and you workshop stuff together as a small group. And then you have this culmination of a talk. Well, that culmination of a talk I did was called The Power of Joint Attention. And last year I got asked to do it as a keynote at this really cool conference in Greenville, South Carolina. And to prepare for that, I spoke at 12 conferences. So it really helped me feel really comfortable with speaking, and everything that he ever taught me. Every time I do a good talk or I'm speaking from the stage or, like people love to talk about that. Although I do virtual talks and there's a lot of people that show up, but there's something about that in the public speaking space. But I always send him an Instagram DM. I'm like, look at me. And you know what I mean?
So amazing. Yeah. And it's such an important skill set too. I mean, Pat Fryman wrote kind of an article about it. I don't know if you see that.
But yes.
And I have people message me all the time and they'll say things like, I could never do that. And I was like, I could never do that. And then I had to do it. And then I did it multiple times and then it got easier. Right. And so I love that. 12 conferences. That's a lot.
Yes. I love that Pat Fryman article, because when I got asked to do that keynote, I was like hyperventilating, rhetorically. And I printed this. Pat Fryman he's a keynoter, BCBA, just so smart, and PhD and all these things. But he has this really cool article on public speaking. And so I did a whole CEU course on public speaking for that, because he has a lot of good strategies. Like the one that I love that I always tell people is, when you get at a conference and you're up there and it's 300 people, the last thing you want somebody to do is read all these accolades of you. Like, Rose is this and she started that, and it's like, no, please don't read my bio. So Pat Fryman says, don't have somebody read your bio word for word. You know what I mean? I always tell people that. I'm like, please don't read my bio. You can say a couple nice things about me, but please don't read my bio. So, when that keynote, they were just he was like, I just got on, I saw you on LinkedIn, and then I saw you everywhere. I was on the Rose Griffin algorithm, and I was like, that's exactly, because it's funny and stuff like that. Okay, I love that. That's very cool. Yeah, and Donald Miller, StoryBrand that was influential for me, because when I started my business, we were doing CEU courses about all kinds of topics. And I read StoryBrand, and it just really hones in your message. It's like, okay, when somebody thinks of Mellanie Page or somebody thinks of Rose Griffin, you're going to have a couple words, right? It's like collaboration, or you know what I mean? OBM, whatever it is, it really kind of tightens up what you're going to talk about, because you can't talk to everybody, because then you're talking to nobody, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you get this word vomit too when you're trying to message about your programs or what you do. And I think we're naturally in that position anyway, because we're BCBAs, and who knows what a BCBA is, right? And so it's we're already in a tough spot. And so simplifying that has been really life-changing for my business, because it makes it so much easier, to have conversations and share your value. So
yeah, I love that. So what is one thing when you were starting your business, or, just on your journey, that you wish you had known sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I have a personal belief that clinicians are conditioned to think that you have to trade like time for impact. And if you're not trading time for impact, you're not being as effective as a clinician. And never in my wildest dreams. Right now, I was checking earlier, I've taught 15,000 BCBAs. Wow. And when I think about that number, like I'm sure people have done more, bigger, better things. But for me, like that would have never even crossed my mind unless I was literally like dragging myself on the floor, completely burnt out, right? Because as a clinician, I think you just assume like in order to be impacting more people, influencing more people, teaching more people, I have to do more. And that's why I know you probably feel similarly with your business, but moving online and being able to share what I know and my knowledge and expertise, and then teaching those people who then teach other people has just changed things for me. And it just changed this belief in myself that I don't have to trade that time. And I just think we're in a fuzzy space as clinicians where every hour feels precious, but we're also burnt out. And so how do we help more and serve more without also sacrificing our own self-care and our livelihood? And so anyway, it's been, I think, a really fun thing to discover over time is that doesn't have to be the case. And we can all have a similar impact, disseminate, share our value, solve problems, and not be burnt out, which I think people would like not believe if they heard that, but it's something that I've, discovered.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, that's the thing too, I learned with the 12 conferences is it would be great. I did my keynote, I would do all these talks, and there might be 300 people in the room, or, it's a jam-packed, like, 100 people, whatever it is. The people that I can actually, it's cool to like connect with people in real life. I still like to do that. Like starting next year, I'm going to go to one conference a year. But I mean, it's hard because I don't get to like dialogue with people. I try to make my sessions really interactive. So there's active student engagement and things like that. But when I do a training online and let's say 300 people show up live, I can answer so many more questions that way. Like I know I've been at talks where even when I was down at FABA, I was like, oh, I want to meet Merrill Winston because he's been on the podcast and he came to my talk and I want to say hi to him. But for me to say hi to him, like he's important and there is a long line. So I have to wait a lot of minutes. And most people in conferences can't wait because they have to get to their next session. You could be, Dr. Heward, who I also met at OHABA. It's just, Greg Hanley. It doesn't matter. It's like people have to get to the next session. Sometimes it doesn't matter who's at the front of the room. So sometimes you can reach more people, online. It's a nice option. So.
And I'm like always surprised too by how much people learn from each other. Like even in this OBM Practitioner Program, people come in, they choose business opportunities, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. But the thought process, the challenges they go through, the barriers, it's nice to hear it from other people experiencing it at the same time and let people kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And so I felt like that's been a neat way when moving things online to see that interaction and that community really building up. And so I don't know if you experienced that too, but that was just a unique, fun take.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you have for somebody who might feel this call to start an online business?
Yeah, great question. I can narrow it to two because I'm a chatty gal. But the first is, and it's something I've been passionate about ever since I kind of shifted my own mindset on it, anything with an ROI is worth investing in. And I think sometimes people see, the price of something and they have a little bit of sticker shock and they just instantly convince themselves not to engage or invest. And I just want to say like, A, you're worth it. And B, like the return on investment, if it's there, it's worthwhile because I've learned skills that I would pay 10 times more to learn because of what they've brought me, whether that's more time in my day, more skills to be able to teach more people, more ways to engage, in monetary return. Like there's just been a worthwhile return on anything that I've ever invested in. And I see people hold themselves back because that's scary. And I get it. I've been there. But I'd say that's like one piece of advice is consider what it can do for you in the future, not the sacrifice you are experiencing today, if that makes sense. And the second is just like action creates clarity. And again, like as a perfectionist, I think that when I want to take action steps, I want it to all be figured out. Like have all the fonts and the colors and every module planned out and every CEU detail and every slide, perfectly curated. And you're never going to get anything done if you wait.
Right.
And you don't learn. Like, I feel like I've gotten so much feedback, putting things out a little bit early, hearing what people need, what their perspective is. And I could try to recreate that experience on my own, but it's not the same as hearing from the people that you're teaching and the people that are engaging with your business. So for those kind of venturing into the space, that have a similar perfectionist syndrome, just to take some steps, I feel like it's really good data. It's data for us to respond to.
No, I like that. Well, you mentioned mindset a lot, but how did you come? Well, it's like I was in the car 8 hours this week visiting my sister-in-law. She just had twins and they're perfect.
Oh,
Yeah, it was so fun with me.
luck to her.
Yes, she's so calm and she's just so I'm so proud of her. I feel like when my kids were that small, I felt internally frazzled. I don't know if I projected that, but I had some time to listen to podcasts. But I mean, I think that's one of the things, it's like these are these stories that you tell yourself, right? Like, because I told myself, speaking in public makes me nervous, right? And so then I invested in working with Mike Pacquiao, which was an investment for my business, my time and my money, but it was worth it because now I feel really comfortable. I have a system. And sometimes it does feel nerve-wracking to take that leap. But I think you have to think about what do I want to transform? So how have you transformed your mindset in some of these, if you had imposter syndrome or you feel like, this isn't good enough to put on Instagram or send to your email list or whatever it is that stuff just inner work that you've done yourself, or did you have a coach, or how did that work for you?
Yeah. Well, I've been in a couple of masterminds that have been very helpful. So I do strongly believe in surrounding yourself with people that are experiencing similar things, because I think a lot of it comes from, again, conditioning, where you have this one negative experience and then 1,000 other positive reviews, but you sort of hyperfixate on Jenny says that you could have said this differently if you're just think about it for 3 months straight. Just me. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I talk about with a group. And I feel like that's almost necessary sometimes for us as humans to just accept, hey, everyone is experiencing the same thing. And also have someone to remind you about those other 1,000 positive things that are happening and the impact you're having. And then I do think periodically just seeing, I'm a very results driven person. So seeing that other people, students of mine in their programs, whether they're doing OBM or creating an online business themselves, they're seeing this result. And what they achieve, it's almost like I'm reliving it every time. And so that's very reinforcing too. So sometimes it's mindset work, but I try to connect the thoughts to real data and real proof and evidence that it works. And so, and I'm not perfect at it either, because there are lots of things that I'll decide just post. It's just not gonna sit well with someone, or and I shouldn't still think that. So
oh dear, I would never post anything. I know somebody had sent me I think someone had shared something of mine on Instagram, and I just hearted it or said some thank you, and they were like, oh, I'm a speech therapist, and I'm almost done with my, I'm just sitting for my test, and all your work's been super instrumental, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, because it's not somebody that I've ever met before my entire life. They're not in my membership yet. They're might be on my email list or something like that, but it's nice to know that you're making a difference. So which you are. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share. So I am at theabacollective.com, and on Instagram, my handle is at the ABA Collective. So the ABA Collective. And then on LinkedIn, it's just Mellanie Page, and Mellanie is 2 L's and Page for her last name.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mellanie, for coming on. It was great to connect.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.